All right, so I'm here with Nick Littlehales, sleep coach. We can, if you want to check him out, and we'll get into it more, but you can visit him at Sports Sleep Coach on most social media platforms or sportssleepcoach.com. Nick kind of got away, if I'm correct, started working with Manchester United, kind of got in there, working with them, and then worked into supporting the Arsenal, and then became chairman of the UK Sleep Council. Nick, if I'm right on all that, and then also maybe just give a little background on how you got into this, how you became so passionate about it, and how it became your livelihood.
Well, thanks for having me on, Mark. Yeah, you've sort of highlighted it. I fell into the sort of sleep industry a long time ago. Did lots of things, working as an international sales and marketing director, travel around the world, looking at all the crazy sleeping habits. Working with, the clinical and academic side as well. So I've been studying it, although I haven't done it academically. So I'm not necessarily classed as an expert in that sense. But I just by accident fell into sport around the late 90s, as you said, with Manchester United. It just happened to be a football club down the road from my UK office. There's no real plan there whatsoever. I started to download what I knew. That started to intrigue them even back then, before phones and technology and 24/7 where we are now. And along that route, I've been working with certain elite groups who were able to invest in this particular area, but they were, a completely different world where we are now. But some significant moments along that route, and was able to develop a sort of technique of how somebody could redefine their recovery approach in this area, and where we find ourselves today, completely submerged in 24/7. It's never been more important. So life's busy at the moment, Mark.
Well, I came across your book from a friend. They sent me a Joe Rogan podcast, and someone said, it might have been a UFC fighter. I'm not dead positive, but it might have been a UFC fighter, and they were talking about holistic and wellness and nutrition, and they said it was the sleep, The Myth of 8 Hours, Power Naps. Your book is the best sleep book they've ever read, and I got it and went through it, and I do like it because of I think it's very practical, and I think that's what I want to try and get into with the interview and my questions. As I mentioned to you earlier, I was raised by vampires, and everybody at our gym knows that sleep is something that I struggle with big time, or at least used to in the past, with routine. I actually took a lot of pride, and almost it was part of my ego that I could rock all night and do an all-nighter.
Yeah.
And as I get older, I kind of realized that was really dumb to cling to that.
It's fascinating when you just mention it. If anybody's out there thinking of writing a book or anything else, it will definitely change your life, because there are things going on which you don't know about, just like you've explained. So you just sit in your own little world, and there's people sharing information and sharing knowledge and sharing books and changing their lives and all sorts of things. And even in today's world, it's sometimes difficult to track it. So it's always nice to hear that stories like that.
No, it's super practical, and I think that's what most people. I kind of compare it to most people say, like, eat your vegetables. And it's like, so everyone knows to eat their vegetables, or everyone knows not to eat processed food, but that it ends up not meaning anything to anyone. So everyone says, get 8 hours sleep, or, how important sleep is, but it ends up not meaning anything because there's no, like, definable actions or tasks, or even a little bit of science to motivate the rational and emotional mind, that kind of sparks action. So first thing I want to ask you about, I guess, was circadian rhythm. Obviously, I think it's a popular topic, but I feel like you would be one of the best that could express just the importance of it and how it plays on our sleep and our health.
We'll have a go. I think there's a number of titles for things that I've learned over the years, and there's things like sleep hygiene, and you sort of go, what does really that mean? Is it cleanliness? Is it what? There's circadian rhythms. And you think, oh, that sounds a bit crazy. Circadian rhythms are nothing more than the sun going around our planet. And It's light and dark and temperature shifts. We used to be outside. You're called Mark, I'm called Nick. We're just brains and bodies and functions. And our brain's relationship with that process has never changed. The sun going around our planet will never change. The way it reacts and tells our brains to do things will never change. And because of all the lack of education, our relationship with it has been a consistent process ever since the electric light bulb was designed and came into our lives. And then we have daylight saving time in certain countries, parts of the world where we shift clocks, which we're about to in the UK. So our relationship with light changes from season to season when it shouldn't. And I think, just a little bit of education, understanding that, to put it simplistically, when we're outside, the sun would rise. It has blue light in it. The blue light would enter our bodies, our brains. That would create a hormone called serotonin. Serotonin would tell the brain to unsuppress everything and start to be active. And then as the light diminishes from midday onwards and then goes to sunset, we would be producing melatonin in diminished light and dark light. And that would encourage the brain to suppress everything and shut us down. And that would go on every day in harmony, patterns and rhythms and timings. So throughout the 24-hour process, that's what we would be doing. And as we've come inside, created light, created daylight saving time, now we've created 24/7 tech and everything else, and we're going to go even further. We simply just can't take, sleep for granted anymore, as we've done in the past, because we have to look at it in a slightly different way. And that first point of getting back to understanding that there is an external clock that does not change. The sun does not have a clock on it. It just does what it does. Depending on where you live, where it's east, west coast of America, or any other part of the world, you have a circadian rhythm that's linked to that particular time zone, timeline. They have a clock inside your hypothalamus in your brain, which is driven by that external clock if you're in harmony with it. You've got clocks inside every organ of your body, and you've got clocks inside of every cell of your body. And each day, we're constantly resetting. And with these other challenges around us, it means that everything we do, if we're completely out of sync with that process, then you're out of sync with everything. So it's so important to tap it in your browser, learn about it at whatever level you want to, and just realize that your brain and everything that functions around you sets you up to whatever you eat, whatever you drink, however you exercise, mentally and physically, is all driven by that complete process. And the way you uncover a better you is just by understanding it better.
What I think the thing that was amazing to me is I'm 37, so, and I mean, obviously anyone who's even 50, 60, 70 years old, you're just kind of born into light, being around, and obviously 24 hours, and now younger generations born into, the technology that exists now, and you kind of just assume that's the way things are, and your interaction with it is normal. And I remember it's like so simple and profound, almost probably sounds dumb on my part, but when you have this aha moment that light actually didn't exist until I don't know exactly when we're talking here, but within the last 100 or so years.
1700s, it hit the streets of Paris.
Okay, so we're talking not that long in the entire history have we been exposed to it, especially at the level we are now with cable TV or devices and whatnot. And the effect that that's playing on the things like you said, the glands and the brain and the neurotransmitters and hormones and all the things that it's affecting. Another thing that you mentioned in your book was the concept of chronotype, or AM or PMer. So I was actually excited to learn that there is a genetic kind of natural disposition to one or the other, because this whole time I kind of just thought I was a a weirdo that couldn't get up in the morning, but it was kind of cool. But you explained that a little bit, and also how they're not too far off. It seemed like you said in the book, where they're only a few hours apart, actually, but still we do have genetic differences or set points.
Yeah, I mean, I heard it a lot, through my whole career, owls and larks. And you hear those things and you think, well, okay, it's a nighttime bird and a morning bird. But I very much related with it because I'm a morning chronotype. I love the mornings. I can't put my alarm on for 9, 10 o'clock. That's just ridiculous. I will always wake early. And I think once you start to investigate those circadian rhythms and how this process is, and we were always outside, is that if a nighttime chronotype and a morning chronotype are spending all their time outside, as the sun rises and the blue light starts to get in through the eyes, into the pineal gland, starts to generate these two hormones, melatonin and serotonin, there is just a phase delay between a morning chronotype and a PM chronotype by about 1 or maybe 2 hours. We're still, I say the academics and the researchers are using technology to redefine this properly, but let's just say it's about 1 or 2 hours later. So I react to that blue light as a morning chronotype quicker than a PMer does. So I'm likely to get up and make breakfast and build a fire and put the coffee on or whatever, and the PMer colleague who's with me has to wait for that process to sort of kick in a little bit later. But then after midday, and we've had a little, chill out after lunch and the light starts to diminish, then the PMer comes into their own. And so I'm driving the morning, the PMer's driving the afternoon and evening. And it's simply because they're just behind, it's like a phase delay of a reaction to light. So in a normal situation where we're all outside, that's what's likely to happen. And technology allows us to know it's a genetic twist. So we can camouflage it with occupations, we can camouflage it with lifestyles, we can override it with overstimulating, but the reality is it's there, and it means I like the mornings, you like the afternoons and evenings, and if you ignore it, at your peril.
Now, one of the things that I definitely, before we even get into maybe like some routines and actual actionable tasks and daily habits and why they're so important, I guess maybe would you be able to explain a little bit about the sleep cycle itself, and just why, I know in the book you have, different pictures and graphics that kind of display like when our optimal release of certain hormones are in the night, or our best sleep is at certain times. What's happening in the morning, what's happening in the evening, as you kind of alluded to, based on the sunlight. But can you explain the sleep cycle thing? Because I think that's definitely one of the things in your book that's most helpful for me. Actually, I was dealing with my daughter. She gets stressed out about not going to bed in time. And just even this concept of like these 90-minute cycles, and I know it's part of your program too. But can you explain the sleep cycle a little bit and why the 90-minute thing is a big part of your book?
Well, you're going to giggle now, aren't you? Before, it's the one thing that that I'd experienced along the route, and then I'm standing in front of elite athletes and I'm trying to educate them and coach them and become a coach. And I'm trying to get them away from this word sleep, because it puts this image in your head. It creates, predisposed thoughts, and I've got to get rid of that. In a clinical environment, from my experience, when we wire ourselves up and we're tracking brainwave patterns off the frontal lobe of your brain, we can see all the light and deep sleep stages and phases that you go through. And I experienced that a lot of academics would look at that in a clinical environment over a 90-minute period. And then they benchmark that against another 90-minute period. And I thought, okay, I'm also aware that we put a 24-hour clock on the sun going around our planet, but actually our internal clocks work on a 24.5-hour cycle. So every day that process is resetting itself. Now, strangely enough, when I started working in football in the UK, soccer, the length of a game was 90 minutes. In between the two halves, there was a break to recover, to massage, to re-strategize, to fuel up and hydrate. So it made sense to me to try and redefine a particular approach to this recovery, is thinking 90-minute cycles rather than hours. So 5 90-minute cycles gives you 7.5 hours in every 24. There's your 8, which is what everybody has in their head. So I'm on a 5-cycle routine, which is 5 90-minute cycles. And then I was able to introduce them to the fact, as we touched on earlier, that pre-light bulb, the 4 major sleep-wake cycles that the human enjoyed was all multiphasic, triphasic and biphasic, not just one block monophasic at night. So if we think in cycles, which comes from the academic side, the clinical side, if we look at cycles in every 24 hours, we're able to break up our day into 90-minute periods where we're able to, start our day well in the first 90 minutes, little breaks every 90 minutes of a couple of minutes, look at how we can take on another controlled recovery period, which is completely natural to the human being, midday and early evening. So we can start to think triphasic, biphasic, not just monophasic, and look at how we're going to extract 7.5 hours recovery over a 24-hour period with a shorter period at night and other little periods. And that was the only way that we could look at the intense schedules in sport where there was absolutely no opportunity to do 8 hours a night, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that's where it was all born.
Okay. And do you find any, I don't want to say harm, but I mean, I guess this was a question I had in reading the book, was in some aspect or some way, would it be better, and I will ask you specifically about the sleep cycles a little bit, but is it better almost in your mind to get 7.5 instead of 8 or 7.5 instead of 7 because of going in and out of these cycles? As in your book, you say up and down the stairs through the 4 stages of sleep. Sometimes you wake up and you're just like out of it, and sometimes you can get way less sleep and wake up and just feel great, actually. It actually happened to me this morning. Is there a thing to that, or do you think just get as much sleep as you can, but you use the 90 minutes as a tool in certain settings?
It's just a tool. It's not about 5 past 7, this and that. It's not about exactly 90. But what we're trying to do is really find something in that individual's head that sort of it's all about rhythms and patterns, about that circadian process. These things are going on all around us which are not relevant to our schedules and timing. And the more you align yourself with it, the better you will be. Most people just wake up in the morning, get on with their day, and then there's so many hours left in this 8-hour mindset that they then just try and force themselves to sleep. And it's a much better way to wake up in the morning and go, this is how I'm going to approach today. There's going to be a shorter period here, a shorter period there. If I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning and feel wide awake, I know what that means, because in that circadian process, that relationship with our brain and that whole process means you're more likely to have developed all the deeper sleep stages between sort of 10 and 2 a.m. in the morning. With all the trackers and apps around today, you can see that people don't experience those deeper sleep stages beyond those points. So if you do wake at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and you're wide awake, then actually trying to go back to sleep is unnatural, because maybe you've enjoyed some good deep sleep stages. There's only about 20-25% of it available in any period anyway. So you may have enjoyed that. So maybe utilize the next 90 minutes or utilize your time positively in a 24-hour rhythm.
Now, do you mind getting into a little bit, just high level, of the sleep stages, the non-REM and non-REM stage 2 or light sleep?
Oh, I don't mind. And you mentioned the stairs thing. Sometimes you're talking to doctors, you're talking to clinicians, you're talking to sports science professionals, and the language changes, but principally I found that sort of like if we're measuring this in a clinic in a 90-minute cycle and you go through these stages, depending on when you try to do this, you either get dumped into deep sleep or you go into light sleep first. So that sort of at the top of the stairs and the good stuff's at the bottom. Research tells us that the non-REM and REM sleep stages are more rejuvenative. It's when you're in a much deeper and more vulnerable state. And if it's at the bottom of the stairs, and as you're wandering down those stairs, things have to be ticking boxes in the brain. So if you're still digesting foods and creating fluids, if you've still got, high levels of serotonin, which are keeping the brain sort of telling it to be active and be not suppressive, but to be unsuppressive. If you're doing all those things, then you just literally wander down in that 90-minute cycle, halfway down the stairs, come back up and have another go, come back up and have another go. And it's kind of like what we're trying to do is to redefine that 24-hour approach. So when you do want to take recovery, either midday, early evening, or nocturnally at night, is that you have at least, it's not prepared, it's not a routine, but you've been working in harmony with this process better, giving it some timings, working with that process better. That means when you do start it, you might go down the stairs, into the good stuff, come back up, do another one. So maybe 3 or 4 90-minute cycles without awakenings, without tossing and turning, overheating, and things like that probably will get you, the right amount of deep sleep throughout that process, which sometimes you can miss out. And when I first started back in the late 90s, women or female sport was sort of a bit of a joke, to be honest. Very male dominated, that was sport. But now, over those 22 years I've been working in sport, some of the women's teams are far better than the males teams in football, in rugby, in cricket.
In the United States.
So it's sort of like, and females have different sort of characteristics than males. They are more powerful and they control the world. Of course, I jest. They have timescales. They have monthly cycles. They have also this nurturing tendency, whether they like children or not, is that they are more alert, more sensitive, and more aware to a lot more factors than men are. So when you're looking at a female elite athlete, you have to be very much more conscious that in that scenario of getting to the bottom of the stairs, is that you have to create a program that will allow them to get down there, because their natural tendencies is to not go down there, because they want to remain alert and sensitive to everything around them, to protect the children, to hear them crying before they actually start crying, and da-da-da-da-da. So it is a nice relationship that sometimes your recovery from the point of wake is more important than actually the recovery when you're spending hours doing it at night.
That's very interesting. I didn't think about the stuff between the different sexes. Well, let's get into some of the reasons we all have so many problems sleeping. Between the lifestyles and the technology and the stimulants and the bedtime, pre and post bedtime and sleep routines. So first one I want to ask you about, which is abused by everyone, including myself, is caffeine. I guess how do you, in your book, you pointed out to it's okay to use it in moderation, but more specifically, it seems like you support it as a sports performance enhancement, so you don't just kind of hop all over the place. You kind of target how you use caffeine.
I was just one of those normal people, who, I'm old enough. My mum used to make tea for fun, cups of tea in the UK and pots of tea and stuff. And I think when I started working with professional cycling, Professional cycling has a relationship with having a little coffee and stuff like that. But it very much engaged me with the ways of the performance enhancement. So just like everything else in life, no sugar, no salt, no caffeine, whatever it is that you're on, there is always a counter side to it. So caffeine is not a problem to the human and its functions if it's used as a pick-me-up, a way to increase alertness, awareness, decision making and things like that. It's only when you use it to overcome poor recovery that it becomes a negative. So you're either caffeine free, but then you have to really delve into, just like the vegans do and the gluten frees and the pescatarians, you have to really delve into caffeine is everywhere. Right? It's in decaffeinated products, it's in painkillers, chocolate cake, everywhere. So you either set yourself up to be caffeine free or you use it to your advantage. And what I learned in professional cycling was that it has a 6 or 7 hour half-life. A half-life is the period of time where it goes from its full impact to nil. So 6 or 7 hours. So when you wake up in the morning, we're normally pretty much caffeine free. So if you introduce 200 milligrams of caffeine, then 3 hours later it will be 100 milligrams of caffeine. This is not science, this is just a guide. So if you then top up with another 100 milligrams, you will back up to 200 milligrams. So the average healthy adult can deal with around 300-400 milligrams of caffeine. And if throughout every 24-hour period you have a relationship with that half-life and introducing it, then you can also use it to help with napping, with your chronotype, with everybody else's schedules that impact on you, to start your day, to end your day. And I would much advise everybody that it's much better to have a regular, controlled approach to caffeine. So every 3 hours, what level am I at? I took 200 3 hours ago. If I take 200 now, it's just topping up on 100. And so you can use it for the graveyard slot in business, just after lunch. You could use it to stimulate yourself before a particular event or an interview or an exam or a particular exercise routine you're doing within the gym. But the last thing you want to do in my world, and from my experience, is to raise it to such high levels through the morning period, particularly with night timers, is to use caffeine to overcome other things and then stop using it. Because for a lot of people, if they take a lot of caffeine in the early morning and then stop using it from lunchtime onwards, then at some point towards early evening, they're going to get a downer. It's like coming down off hard drugs. So I very much, if you use it in a controlled way, know about its half-life, know where it is, and use it in a nice balanced way to keep the brain and everything in your functioning happy. Don't just do this overload, shut down lunchtime, don't anymore. Because if you look at it like that, every 3 hours you're either topping up or keeping a balance, and then by the time you get ready to go into a recovery period, you can actually use it to your advantage. And that's one of the processes that we use a lot in elite sport.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I have had the periods where I drank too much in the morning, and then and you talk with friends and everyone and gym members and whatnot, and you get that period where you're like, you realize you had too much caffeine and you got the shakes and you're almost having like an anxiety attack. I do rely on it. I teach evening classes in some of our, during the week, and for lack of a better word, I like to get high before I go in, meaning with caffeine, to have some good energy for the gym and not be down and kind of. But I think that balance is key, because sometimes I probably overdo it in the morning, and then you do feel that crash, and then you feel like you almost need it just to even feel normal.
If you keep it on fairly low levels, like 300-400 in a 24-hour period, if you keep it on fairly low levels and you balance it like that, you can actually see what you're doing this week. And, when you wake every morning, you're pretty much free. So if you've got something happening at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you can balance it so you're going, you're picking yourself up at the right moment. It's now drifting away because it's half-life. Then you pick yourself up again. And so you use it to have those highs, to have those pick-me-ups. But what it is a short-term high. It's not a long-term high that's going to take forever to get rid of. And that's the balance. So you either don't do it at all, or you use it positively.
So I guess then, to finish up on this, you would obviously recommend then that there does have to be a certain point in time in the day where you cut it off based on this half-life and based on your bedtime routine.
Yeah. But at the same point, Mark, it's if I sort of think that I would like sort of 300 milligrams per day, so I start the day putting 100 in.
Okay.
3 hours later, it's gone back to 50. So I can up it with 200 milligrams or whatever. I'm not going above that particular level. So if all the time throughout the day, I'm either on 300 milligrams or half of it, as I'm moving between that half-life, then as I move into the evening period, and the summer comes along and the winter comes along and we have these shifts, I might need a pick-me-up to enjoy the summer, because I'm an AMer and I don't want to fall asleep at 8 o'clock when everybody's out there having fun, or there's an event for the game. So I will still use it, but all I'm doing is moving from 200 to 400, 200 to 400, 200 to 400. And then when I get to a certain point where, in those 90-minute cycles rather than hours, that, those couple of cycles into before I'm going to go for a broad nocturnal sleep, is that I know that 400 is going to, over those couple of cycles, shift back down to 200. That is consistent in my brain and in my cycles and in my chronotype and in my circadian rhythm. So as it shifts down to 200, that will actually help me move into recovery, and then 3 hours later, it's gone. So sort of stopping it at any point in time is like loading yourself up, and then the body's craving for it. So it's either don't do it or control it in a manner that helps your performance and helps what you're doing every day, and understanding how much is wherever. It's just something that sport and life has never really taken too much interest in. And even still today, I go into organizations where they don't have any caffeine protocols along with very other things. It's like, manage it and it's great. Dismanage it and it's suicidal.
Well, I want to use that to transition into one other topic before we actually get into bedtime routines, naps. And a thing that I always wondered was, when people normally feel tired, there's a whole market and industry built around it. When we feel tired between, midday or mid-afternoon, whether, it's 1 to 3 or early evening, depending on the person. Obviously it's kind of pitched that we don't get enough sleep, or we overstimulate in the morning and then we need another boost, or whatever it may be. We're just exhausted, or maybe we just have too many carbohydrates and our blood sugar's all over the place. But is there, first of all, we'll get into what's the best way to take a nap, but also, is there a natural ebb and flow to the cycle, or to the cycle of the day, where a nap is good or natural? Where it doesn't have to do with being overstimulated, but just the body does want that at a certain time of day. Is that natural in any way?
It's totally natural. We had 4 major sleep-wake cycles before the light bulb. None of them was monophasic, one block at night. They were all multiphasic. And I think anybody who it's sort of, you try to relate this back to every day. When you wake up in the morning, you're not getting more awake. You're just moving to the next recovery period. It's like going up a slope. So when the sun has been producing blue light at a much stronger level than any other light we produce internally or through tech, It gets to midday and then starts to diminish. And it means that midday is completely a natural time because we've been woken up by the sun, we've been woken up by this blue light, we've been active, emptying bowel and bladder, testosterone, blood pressure, coordination, everything else. We get to the midday period and then we need to just chill out. As we continue then up that slope towards the main nocturnal sleep period, there is a natural period early evening when we just need to just stop. And as each generation has gone on, snoozers for losers. What does nap mean? It's some old guy in front of the fire at Thanksgiving. You know, it's not. And you know, certainly in the UK, we have big signs all over our motorways, our autobahns, our freeways, that says tiredness can kill. Take a break. And what we're saying is that when you put the brain in a certain set of circumstances, visualization, mindset, zone out, when you put it in a certain set of circumstances at a certain point in the day, it will actually put you to sleep behind the wheel of a car, Mark. Now, no right person would choose to do that. All you have to understand is that if you put yourself in the right point in that circadian rhythm, if you put yourself in that multiphasic, polyphasic approach, early evening and midday and nocturnal, is that if your brain wants to put you to sleep, it will. You have no rules over this. It'll do it. So I try to encourage people to just take a moment out, either midday or early evening, depending on their chronotype, depending on their occupation, depending on their schedules and everything else, just to take, you know, that 30 minutes out, just to do a few things. Don't even try to go to sleep, because if you just present your brain with the right set of circumstances at the right time, if it needs to shove you in there, it will, irrespective of what you're thinking or doing. So this sort of nap, CRP, is just, if you only knew in the very early days of education from parents or schooling that actually the human being has always slept polyphasically, and it's how children come into the world. They don't come into this world sleeping monophasically at the slightest. They sleep short periods more often. They feed, they empty their bladders and bowels, and they do it again. And then it just starts to extend. And if you think about that, you then start to have a real relationship with what 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes at the right time of day, just for you, can help your brain, your circadian rhythms, or your internal, external clocks, how you process foods, how you process information, how much you can get out of anything you're doing, so much better as you stop thinking snoozers for losers, nappers can't do it, they can't hack it. And that's the new generation we're going into, where we'll be sleeping far more polyphasically than we have done in the past. And if you want to gain an edge or a marginal gain, or just be at your PB more consistently and sustainably, this is how you need to redefine your approach to it.
And I think, I'm not sure if it was your book or another book, but I feel like I was exposed to the idea of like the concept of just this 8 hours straight. That's not how we would have slept before. Like even in your book, you talk about like, imagine, you kind of bring everything back to imagine you're on an island and we don't have all of these modern things. You know, you're going by a campfire, you're going by the sunlight, you're going by nature. And like I said, once again, I forget if it was your book or another book, but it kind of pointed out how you would wake in the middle of the night, like you said, maybe empty your bladder, go back to sleep, and there'd be this longer period that followed the darkness where you're off and on sleeping through these cycles and waking back up. So once again, I know people can mentally torture themselves if it's not 8 hours perfect, or if it's not. So these different phases, capitalizing on naps or these phases is key.
I know it's sort of not taking people back into the past because we're moving forward rapidly. But that relationship of not chasing sleep. It's a 24-hour process. Your brain is in charge of it. If you just slide it into that natural circadian rhythm as best you possibly can, understanding all the challenges we have every day, it's amazing how you can increase your levels of more consistent and sustainable levels of mental and physical recovery by just tuning into it a little bit better, because it starts to unlock things for you that you've never experienced before. And that's why, some people use these words like paradigm shift in my recovery process. And I've been trying for years and years and years to combat these things, and nothing's worked. And just get more in harmony with it, and it's amazing. It just comes out naturally.
It's interesting where, if I'm understanding you correctly, that it seems more like based on your routine and your day, your custom responsibilities and demands, to find that routine that complements your thing, and you can use these cycles. It doesn't have to be a one-way fits all type of thing.
Not at all, because you have Olympic swimmers who have been designed to get up. Well, the sport has designed you to get up, whether you're an AM or a PMer, to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, bust your lengths. But then if you get to an Olympic level, you're not doing heats and trials until 11, 12 o'clock at night, because you're in Rio or Tokyo or whatever. So
right. You're
constantly in an adjustment process of moving through different circadian rhythms, different, the manager of your team yesterday was a PM chronotype, so they like to do everything in the afternoon and early evening. And then tomorrow you've got a coach who's a AMer, and they like everything to be done at 6 o'clock in the morning. And they're all trying to balance this approach. So once you have a relationship with this polyphasic sleep approach, and you can apply it in your own particular way and combat things that happen which are out of our control, like children coming along, like all sorts of things happening in our lives, you can start to realize that you've got a way of approaching every day which has got a more defined approach, and stop chasing sleep. Just plan your 24 hours to allow it to happen. And when people start to understand that, when you wake up in the morning, what has happened in the hours you've allocated to sleep, cycles or hours, whatever you've done, it's gone. Forget about it. Just start your day. Get light, hydrate, fuel up, mental challenges, do some light exercise. In the first 90 minutes of your day, bring you and your brain and all your organs and all your clocks, bring them into play. So every 90 minutes throughout the day, you are focused on activity and recovery. And so when the next point comes, when you want to actually get some physical, mental recovery sleep, whether it's midday, early evening, or nocturnal, it's likely to happen much better than you've ever imagined before.
Well, I think one of the things that hit me most in your book was to kind of convey this point, was when you said how the body will prioritize what it needs. So when it needs it, like if you miss a cycle or two one night, if it really needs it, like you said, it'll either force upon you these micro naps, or if you're actually sleeping, it'll get into the deeper phases of sleep quicker, because the body is finding homeostasis or trying to find what it needs.
It's amazing, Mark, when you just tap circadian rhythms in your browser for the first time. There's a lot of people who are very intelligent listening to this who've probably done it. You tap that in, you understand the brain and the functions and the rhythms and patterns and all of these sort of things. You realize that sometimes when you're exercising, it just might be, maybe you should just do 30 minutes, not an hour. Sometimes if you're trying to do 5 a day, if all your little clocks inside your body are out of sync, they're going to process this stuff in a completely different way than you think. So you might be trying to eat healthily and take on good organic foods and trying to get that nice, healthy, balanced diet and wherever you are. But you're putting stuff inside of you that's being processed in a different way than you think what's going in. So once you get that relationship between hydration and fuel up, is that if I'm going to put that in, is my body ready to deal with it and process it in the way it wants to? Or is it going to just take that 5 a day and shove glucose over there, fats over here, store that over here and everything else, because all your clocks are out of sync? And it sounds a bit sci-fi, but it's kind of, have we got to a 5 a day yet? Have we got to a balanced exercise? There's lots of things we keep getting involved with when we don't understand this process. And, you know, if I'm really in sync with the circadian rhythms and all my clocks are in the right place, then maybe eating burgers might not be a bad thing, right? For long periods of time. Maybe,
No.
You know what I mean? It's because sometimes we focus so much on the external stuff, we don't actually understand that what we're putting inside our mouth might make a load of sense. No carbs, no gluten, no this, proteins, da. But our body's not processing that stuff in the way that we think it is. And that's a fascinating subject that I think the next generation, I would just love them to find out what all that's about.
No, and it's very true, and that same paradigm carries over to everything. A lot of people love taking supplements, or they'll come up and be like, oh, if I take glucosamine, will that help me? And I'm like, well, it could, but if you keep lifting the bar the wrong way, there's no amount of glucosamine that's going to fix the system, fix the problem.
Sort of collectively, not just me, you know, I'm just a sleep coach in one particular area, but, you know, we work with lots of people. It's just that if you do the same thing as somebody else, you don't get the same benefits. Because, you know, it's about finding what works for you and that balance and that rhythm and that pattern and your chronotype and lots of other things in your lifestyle, you know, that affects it. Whether you're a night shift worker, an Amazon worker, you know, all of these things affect this natural rhythm. So you have to find that balance where you might eat a burger and it just shoves all the fats in the wrong place and you don't get any benefits whatsoever. But you kind of sit there and think, so Usain Bolt, you are the fastest man on the planet. What things have made that happen? Has he been eating 5 a day for his whole life? I doubt it. Has he been tracking his sleep for his whole life through Olympic finals and gold medal? No. Has he been making sure he gets naps and CRBs and nocturne? No, he just does what he does. And he gets there and he's faster. So, have I seen him eating a McDonald's at an Olympic, you know, at an Olympic stadium when the McDonald's are everywhere? A quick burger, some carbohydrates, puts a smile on his face, fries and chips. Yeah. In a whole balanced approach, but we're still, you know, we love stuff that we've been looking at for a long time, but in this particular area, you know, it's such a wonderful world to investigate. We still don't know what's going to come out of it. We're trying our best. Thank God everybody's thinking about it carefully, but we need to be very careful with the very, very first early baby steps of trying to work out what sleep means to us, how it can affect us, how we can change it, redefine it, not to go away from some of the obvious specifics about this process, but I would love to know how much deep sleep Usain Bolt has got in his life. Because it may be nothing. It may be zero. And for anybody who's tracking their sleep tonight, just remember that he may have been the fastest person on the planet, and he never went into REM or non-REM or deep sleep for any more than 5% of his life. We don't know. Right? So, all of these sort of conversations we're having, Mark, we can point in the right direction. We can start to educate in the right direction. But we really need to just start, point one, like these podcasts. There's lots of myths and misunderstandings. There's no data capture. There's nothing to fall back on. There's nothing to look back on. We're just starting the process of realizing just how important this recovery process is. And probably the first place we need to do is just look back to the 1700s and start afresh.
No, I think the personal relationship aspect, the polyphasic, all those things are pretty key so that people have that healthy relationship with it, and it's not too we don't get too neurotic about doing it the so-called right way. So it does have to be personal. But let's get to just the last thing here. I know you have the sleep kit. I know we talk about how light affects the body, how one of the things you talk about is you're getting up in the morning at the same time every day so that your personal body can fall into that. Obviously there's going to be occasions where it can't, but could you talk about just what do you think if someone's asking you, you're giving a quick hitter, pre-post sleep, what are the most vital things to do for behaviors? What do you think is the most bang for your buck?
Post sleep. So just get a pencil and a paper out for a change. Draw a circle. Draw a vertical line down the center and a horizontal line across the middle. Identify your most consistent wake time. This is either about your chronotype, your occupation, or whatever. For me, it's 6:30. Chop your day up into 90-minute cycles, and from tomorrow morning, start to think about Nick, me, wakes up around 5:45, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, but I'm always going to be active at 6:30. The first 90 minutes of my day, I need to make sure more than any other point in my career that is about waking my body up. So if you put a consistent wake time in, we've all got them. Anybody who's listening to this will go, oh, you've all got them. It's a 7-day consistent wake time. So between 6:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning, yes, I can be active, I'm bowel and bladder, I need to get that light into my life, whether it's inside my bedroom or outside in the summer. I need to get that blue light into my brain to activate and unsuppress. I need to be careful about interacting with a 24/7 world too quickly. It's a bit like going on social media when you've had too many glasses of wine. It's, and phone direct, text direct. It's like you need to, that first 90 minutes of your day, for me between 6:30 and 8, it's all about domestic chores. It's about breakfast. It's about hydration. It's about light. It's about bowel and bladder. I want to get rid of the waste that was suppressed when the sun went away last night. Because I want to be using the good stuff I've just put inside of me. And from 8 o'clock onwards, I will make good decisions. I will make good decisions. If I try to bring myself into the world too early, I am not going to make good decisions. And we all get that crazy misconception about that whole process. And along the route, just nice little breaks every now and again. Take the water off your desk. That 2-litre bottle of water, that half a litre, whatever it is. Take it off your desk. You're eating your breakfast at your station. You're doing this, you're doing that. Take it off your desk. Go and get some breaks. Try and think about. Get a light meter. Let's move things on from, tech is a pain in the arse, of course. Shut your tech down before you go to sleep. Block your blue light out. You're going to get better sleep. No. The first 90 minutes of your day will determine how you're going to recover for the rest 24. So when you start to have that relationship with this, about light and dark, and temperature and shifts, and rhythms and patterns, you can have a complete paradigm shift to what you're doing, and you'll get so much more out of everything you do, even if it's a CrossFit class. Yeah? Because you
Absolutely.
understand that you are an AMer, not a PMer. You'll realise that class is at a certain time in that process. So there's things you can do from the point of break that will allow you to get more out of that class than you've ever got before. Because you are, instead of having a controlled plan into this area, you're just wandering into it and trying to make the best of it.
Well, is there anything you feel people struggle with sleep a great deal? I mean, I feel like if I ask anybody, almost they're struggling or they're waking, and then people go to supplements, specifically melatonin. I actually personally have recommended and geared people more towards like magnesium than melatonin, just from my own personal research. But I guess, do you have any input on that or an opinion?
I think you just, write it on the wall in your bathroom or your kitchen or bedroom that this is a completely natural recovery process. You don't need any help whatsoever. Supplements, eye masks, earplugs, technology. You don't need any help with this at all. It's a natural process that happens every day, just like activity. It is there for you to take advantage of. So start from that point. We have so much more opportunity to access things that are unprescribed. Sleeping tablets, melatonin and stuff. Have you tested yourself for melatonin? Ask yourself the question, why melatonin when you haven't even tested the levels of your melatonin and serotonin produced at certain times of the day, 24 hours a day, 365 years a year. Melatonin is simply just something that tells the brain, maybe you should be doing this. It doesn't stop the brain overriding it. It's just something there. So all of these factors boil into a place where I just write it on the wall. This is an absolute natural recovery process. You are designed to sleep more often, not long periods at night. The reason why most people struggle with sleeping for 8 hours at night, we got away with it a long time ago. Well, a long time ago, back in the 90s. But, maybe if you just research it a little bit, you'll realize that this is how we do night shift workers, long-haul pilots, surgeons, nurses, firemen, shift workers in Amazon. The Eskimos in freezing cold temperatures, they haven't got their Eve mattress, they haven't got their special pillows, but they still survive. When you look at all those aspects of humans living on this planet, just put one thing up, take the post-it note out, or whatever, write it on your chalkboard. This is a natural recovery process, and my first point in time is to understand it better, so I can redefine my approach as of tomorrow. Take the pressure off, stop worrying about it, still get your 8 hours in every day, but redefine it. It's how you get it. 35 cycles in 7 days. Sometimes you won't sleep at all, because that's the way it is. If I'm out to do an Olympic final, I ain't gonna sleep. But I could use sleeping tablets to force it. If I knew any better, I wouldn't do that. There is so much, we get addicted to supplements, we get addicted to all sorts of things trying to overcome this recovery process. But if you just take a moment out to realize this is as natural as it gets, enjoy it, make yourself a little bit more in tune with it, and it'll change your life.
No, it's an interesting perspective, and actually, it hit in talking with you. It's hitting me a lot different than even when you just read the thing. Obviously, getting to hear you personally talk about it and how um, just if you let it and you give it an environment and you have a personal, and I emphasize personal relationship with it, that is the right answer, not some formulated textbook or whatever. Or don't force it with either stimulants or downers, or just let it. It's fine as is if you're letting the body do what it needs to do, and however that looks is different. I've always wondered that because I always hear like John Gruden sleeps 4 hours a night, and I have no idea if John Gruden's healthier. But you'll hear these people that it seems very different in how they operate versus like what you're told your whole life.
Yeah, yeah. You need to put everything in context. We do need a level of recovery. We can't ignore that. You can't start doing, 26 minutes a day. You're gonna fail. But I work with professional single-handed round-the-world sailors. You can't spend 3 months at sea on a boat, stripped completely, with so many criteria before you can actually leave the deck. You have to adopt a polyphasic approach, a multiphasic approach, an Uberman phasic approach. And everybody can just tap that in. It's real. 26, 30 minutes every 6 or 7 hours. No blocks, no nothing. You do have to realize that there's people out there who work so many different schedules. It's just a natural process, and once you start realizing that, then you can start to mold a recovery process that suits you. We're not designed to sleep with other humans. Is another one that's always fascinated me. We love the spooning, we love the love, we love the cuddling, but we actually turn away from each other. So we spend a lot of our time in that early formative years sleeping alone, and then we suddenly have a regular sleeping partner. And these are barriers to recovery. So don't just you can't sort of turn around one day and go, I've just taken this supplement that's apparently going to help me sleep. I've just taken this because apparently I've just bought this new pillow, apparently, and I've just bought this new mattress, apparently. And when actually you are sleeping with another human in a very small space, in a convened environment, whether it's in the city or outside, and that's not natural to us. So it's going to be a barrier. How do you minimize it? And it's a really nice process to go along of, and we could talk for about another 3 hours on this, but we get so hung up on trying to solve problems and issues when actually you do know that if you're left-handed, your partner is right-handed, you're sleeping in a double or king size or queen size bed, which is less space than you had as a child in a cot. If you're living inside of a city rather than the countryside, all of these things are barriers for you to be able to recover properly. Identify them, and now let's start to put them right. Let's start to minimize their effect. And that's why wherever I live, when I wake up in the morning, I know my partner, I know the size of my bed, I know my environment, I know my chronotype, I know we've always slept in different ways. I put all those things into place. Now, what am I going to do today to try and maximize more consistent and sustainable levels of recovery today? Because I'm doing lots of things that are against those things. And once I get to that point, wow, it makes so much sense.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I really appreciate your time here, Nick. One last question for you, and I ask every person I interview. I always interview people I really admire, experts, people's books that I'm reading, stuff like that. And I think the thing that, in some regard, they're mentors to you or to me in aspects of your life. And something that I always like to ask is, what does your typical day look like from a diet, training, and sleep standpoint. I think you've obviously probably covered a little bit of the sleep for and what your day looks like as far as your post-morning routine, but what's your day look like? How does it actually work, most times?
To answer that honestly, I have no idea. What I do know is I wake most consistently between 6 and 6:30. I very much enjoy my first 90 minutes of the day because that's all about me. Light and dark, a little bit of exercise, some domestic chores, depending who's sleeping in the bed next door to me. Taking a smoothie or a cup of tea. Hopefully it's a PMer because they'll look at it later on. It's content podcasts, education, traveling around the world, talking to people about sleep all the time. So I'm very, very conscious about, constantly trying to make it up. This particular podcast is happening when I should be eating my early evening meal. So I enjoy my breakfast early morning. I take a light lunch. I take as many breaks as I possibly can. I'm very much aware of the amount of light that's outside and the decreased amount of light that's inside, however intense it is. I wander around with a little light meter just to control my day because I want 12 hours of light and 12 hours of diminished and dark light every day, irrespective of the season, as we shift the clocks in a couple of months. I choose my sleeping partners carefully because it means I might have to sleep on the wrong side of something, in the wrong position.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere that you said pick the biggest bed you can.
Yeah, we could have another podcast about that one. And I'm also very conscious that some of the things that I have learnt over the years and worked with elite athletes is that shorter, more defined mental and physical recovery periods are more beneficial to me than trying to sleep and failing, like most, to sleep 8 hours a night, because it just doesn't work. And I think the only reason I can talk to you and do this podcast this evening is you are in Philadelphia, I am in Nottingham, West Bridgeford, UK. We're on completely different time zones. We're on completely different circadian rhythms. And the only reason, rightly or wrongly, or good or bad, that I can actually speak to this, because these are some of the advancements in technology that we can take advantage of. And that's my day. I spend most of the time, 24 hours, grabbing recovery opportunities in a polyphasic way, just before we invented the light, because it's the only way I can enjoy my life and actually experience life. And by the way, there's an Amazon delivery about to arrive.
That's still the same for both of us, whether you're in UK or out here.
Another Amazon delivery. If I only order it, I've got about 5 hours to order an Amazon delivery, and it'll be here before tomorrow morning.
Well, I greatly appreciate your time, Nick. I think your view is kind of paradigm shifting on how most people approach, and it is for me too. It kind of lets you kind of find your own thing and kind of fit it into a modern life a lot better, a lot healthier approach and a relationship with it. So I hope to talk to you sometime in the future. You were kind enough to, I messed up the times and the time zones, so I really appreciate you being cool with that. I felt like an idiot, but I appreciate it, Nick.
Things are moving so quickly, we're still learning even today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Nick, and best of luck with everything.